to you, as a former Marine infantry commander who's been trying to get an Iraqi veteran into the United States, an Iraqi veteran who saved your life.
Right. Yeah.
When you heard about this travel ban, what was your reaction, and what has it been over the last couple of days?
My initial reaction was, what is this ban? What does it mean, and how is this going to affect the captain? I mean, that was my personal reaction, and I think just being able to talk to the captain and look at his case, this stops it. And effectively puts it on hold. And it brings up that question, is those allies that have served directly beside us, that have saved American lives, what does that matter in this policy review? And I think there are some clauses in there that allow for special cases, and I think this really could be an opportunity to evaluate those that have served directly alongside of us and hopefully get them either here to the United States or at least protected.
Okay, so Nelson, there is this list which the Pentagon is putting together of Iraqi nationals who assisted U.S. forces in Iraq over the last 15 years, but there doesn't seem to be any clarity on who will actually make the list, how that decision will be made. What do we know about it?
Well, my hope is that they will coordinate among themselves. The Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, Defense Department, all of them got to work in sync as soon as possible to protect the friends of America and bring them in as quickly, and use that clause that was mentioned earlier to allow them on a case-by-case basis to be vetted and to be brought into the United States. They have already done vetting, it's my understanding, and therefore they should be expedited, be brought into the United States.
I mean, even the name of the executive order, protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entities in the United States, what message does that send to the captain and to other Iraqis who served alongside the U.S. forces?
It's simple. We don't trust you. And that's very, very difficult. For me as a veteran, but also for those advisors that are on the ground overseas right now. That's not the message that you want to put on the battlefield, that we don't trust you. And that's going to be, in a lot of ways, those that are deployed right now are in damage control mode, trying to rebuild that relationship. And back to the point of the list with Nelson, we got to remember here too, on the Secretary of Defense, this is a former Marine general. And like most Marines, you don't go to your commander with just problems. Right, you go with solutions.
Sure.
And so actually getting this list together and figuring out who those names are going to be on the list and what capacity they may be able to help with the national security strategy and also protect American lives abroad is the right thing to do. It's going to get us in a position to act.
But Nelson, if we go back to this list, does that now mean that for these Iraqi nationals who served the U.S. military, who've already jumped through so many hoops, who have already been sort of in line, waiting, trying to get the visa, are they sort of now back to square one? Have they got to go through this process all over again, waiting for some kind of approval from the Pentagon?
My hope is that they do not. They have done all these background checks, and it's just a matter of identifying them and I put in themselves into that category of the national interest to allow them to come in. It shouldn't take them a lot of the time that already they spent waiting, sometimes years, waiting to be classified as refugees and to be brought into the United States.
Have you had a conversation with the captain about all of this?
I have, absolutely.
What did he say?
At first he's frustrated, absolutely, and rightfully so. His case has been put on hold, and he has to wonder, what is his future for his kids? But at the same time, I think there's a little glimmer of hope. And that hope is to say that he's somebody that saved American lives, that has stood by us for almost a decade and been committed to our values, and not to mention he's a asset in the fight, ongoing fight against ISIS and non-state actors. I mean, these are the kind of people that have the cultural, language, and experience on the ground that we need in this fight.
He's already been waiting 2 years, I think?
Almost, over 2 years,
Over 2 years, in Turkey.
In Turkey.
In a country that doesn't speak the language.
Correct.
In a small apartment, with no income.
No.
Struggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now there's another hurdle. I mean, he must have heard this, and there must have been disbelief at first.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also the connection that I have, that I've built that relationship. And then he looks at me and says, Chase, you and I stood together, we fought together. And I've told him, I'm not going to leave you behind. That's not who I am. And however the policy comes out, and whatever he looks at it, we're going to have to evaluate how we can work for his case. But my hope is that the captain's case can be an example for what could be possible, not only for our national security interests, but being able to protect those here at home. I mean, we can do this. It's just a matter of getting the information that we need, getting the policy professionals in the room who are going to look at this, and rising above that fear that we have. We can do this.
But Nelson, I mean, that's the goal, that's the hope.
Yeah.
But from a legal point of view, you know how the system works. You know how these laws can often be interpreted. I mean, I had a situation at the airport. There were court orders that were put in place that said, you know, the people at the airport must be allowed through customs. They must be allowed into the United States. And there were customs and border protection agents who did not follow that because they didn't get the right word from Washington, or there was confusion or whatever. So you know that even when these rules are implemented, nothing seems to go as planned.
Yes, the laws are there, but the implementation is what's crucial, what's important. The executive order is very broad. It speaks in very general terms. At the end of the day, they're going to come back with specifics as to how they're going to go about implementing. And I hope they take into consideration all these very, very valid points and do not make it more difficult, as the process already is, for these individuals who, as up to now, have been exemplary coming in. There has not been any incidents, to my understanding, that refugees have caused into the United States from those countries, and therefore, especially people who have served or helped us in the battle against our enemies abroad, that we are there for them coming in.
There's a situation right now that there's a group of Iraqi pilots currently training in Arizona, and as an indication of the confusion created by this executive order, no one knows what to do with them right now. So how do you deal with Iraqis who are currently in the country with their visas?
Again, if you're inside the country, I don't believe the executive order should apply to you, except if you are in some way, shape, or form violating the terms of your visa. You're protected, you're in. The problem is coming in. You have already been admitted. You are in the United States. Abide by the terms, complete your training, do everything by the book, and you should be fine. And already there's been litigation put forth that people who want to be taken out, they're being prevented from doing it so because they're already protected. It doesn't apply, in my opinion, to the executive order.
Chase, this executive order, the administration stresses it's for a 90-day period. It's not permanent. It's temporary. Does that make any difference here?
Absolutely. Time is critical here, especially, you know, in the captain's case, he's been waiting, but there were also those Iraqi SIVs who were on their way here to the United States that have been turned back in many ways. And there have been some cases where they have to go back into Iraq, and 120 days, 90 days underground in Iraq makes a difference, especially when your life is on the line. So time is of an essence here, and I hope that that's part of the considerations when we're looking at these policies, to say if we are going to make exceptions, we need to look at them, do it carefully, make sure they're being protected, but make a decision because people's lives are on the line.
And when you're a refugee, 90 days is a lot more than an inconvenience, right?
No, of course, depending on where you are. You just heard the description of what the captain said, and there are people who are worse off than him at this particular moment in worse conditions. And so everybody's got a unique story, but especially most likely there are people like the captain that need to be expedited and brought into the United States as soon as possible.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Chase and Nelson, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You.
Take a short break. When we